Welcome to Miss Scarlett. Subscribe and don't miss out on Patreon. Have fun! As shadows fell across the towering corporate edifice, Pinnacle Advertising's once vibrant atmosphere mirrored the somber dusk. Economic headwinds had arrived at their doorstep, forcing the company's leaders to take action. Amid the rows of identical cubicles, Xander Matthews walked, a mere cardboard box carrying his decade-long career. The minutes of his final meeting replayed in his mind as he made his way through the familiar corridors one last time. He thought of the countless weekends spent in front of a computer screen, strategizing marketing campaigns, and the relentless pursuit of perfection that now seemed so hollow. A tap on his shoulder and a sympathetic colleague's apology echoed through the muted hum of the office. The irony wasn't lost on him. He slid it face down into the box. His phone buzzed in his pocket. A notification from his banking app. His last paycheck had been deposited. Along with his severance, it was the final influx of the comfortable salary he'd grown accustomed to. The salary that had funded not just his downtown apartment and weekend getaways, but also the carefully curated collection of designer dresses, premium cosmetics, and accessories that filled the hidden section of his closet at home. The elevator ride down 40 floors gave him plenty of time to calculate expenses: rent, utilities, food, insurance. The necessities would drain his savings quickly. The special wardrobe additions he'd been planning would have to wait, perhaps indefinitely. Back in his apartment, Xander dropped the box by the door and headed straight for his walk-in closet. He pushed aside the row of tailored suits and crisp button-downs, revealing the secondary clothing rod behind them. His hand trembled slightly as he ran his fingers along the silk, satin, and chiffon fabrics of the dresses that had cost him thousands over the years. The hand-stitched beading on an evening gown he'd worn only once. The buttery, soft leather of pumps that had taken 3 paychecks to afford. "Well, Ophelia," he whispered to himself, using the name he'd chosen for his feminine persona years ago. "Looks like we're on hiatus." His phone rang again. This time it was his friend Dominic. "Just heard about Pinnacle. You doing okay?"
"As well as can be expected after losing a 6-figure job."
Xander sank onto his bed, eyes still fixed on the colorful array of clothes.
"Listen, we're having drinks at Malone's tonight. Come join. First round's on me."
2 hours later, Xander found himself in a dim pub surrounded by former colleagues, all trying to drown their newfound employment status in imported beer. His mind, however, kept drifting to the unopened package sitting on his kitchen counter, a special order corset he'd splurged on last month, before rumors of layoffs had begun circulating.
"Earth to Xander. Where'd you go, buddy?"
Dominic waved a hand in front of his face.
"Sorry, just processing. You'll bounce back. Someone with your portfolio will get snapped up fast."
Maybe. But the job market was flooded with talented professionals from multiple agencies that had downsized. Competition would be fierce. The conversation shifted to budget trimming strategies. Someone mentioned canceling their gym membership, another talked about moving to a cheaper apartment.
"I've been getting into thrifting lately," one of the graphic designers mentioned. "You'd be amazed what you can find for a fraction of retail. My entire outfit cost less than $20.
Xander glanced at her stylish blouse and tailored pants. They looked expensive, professional. Something clicked in his brain. After 2 more rounds, he excused himself and headed home, his mind spinning not with alcohol, but with possibilities. He opened his laptop and began searching high-end thrift stores near me. The next morning, Xander stood outside, twice as nice, a consignment shop in a part of town he rarely visited. Through the window, he could see racks of clothing organized by color rather than size or style.
Men's and women's items intermingled freely. An elderly woman arranging a mannequin in the window spotted him and waved him inside. "First time thrifting?" she asked when he entered, noting his hesitation. "Is it that obvious?" She chuckled. "You have that retail regular look. But don't worry, everyone starts somewhere." She gestured around the store. "We organize by color here. Makes it easier to create cohesive looks. Feel free to explore." Xander nodded, moving toward a section of blues and greens. His fingers touched the sleeve of a royal blue cocktail dress. The fabric was surprisingly supple, the stitching precise. He checked the tag, a designer label he recognized. The price, $18. For the next hour, he browsed quietly, examining quality, checking sizes against his own measurements. By the time he approached the register, his arms were full of garments: an emerald green cocktail dress with subtle beading, a burgundy pencil skirt with a matching blazer, 3 blouses in varying styles, and a vintage pair of black kitten heels that miraculously fit his feet. The woman rang up his purchases without comment, though her eyes sparkled with something like approval. "That comes to $72.50. Xander blinked. The emerald dress alone would have cost hundreds new. He handed over his credit card, half expecting some catch. "There's another place you might like," she said, as she bagged his items. "Better than new over on Elm Street. They get some really nice accessories. Scarves, jewelry, handbags." He thanked her and left with his treasures, feeling lighter than he had since the layoff. The next day, he visited Better Than New, then a vintage store called Yesterday's Treasures. By the end of the week, he'd amassed an impressive collection of secondhand clothes, shoes, and accessories for a fraction of what one of his designer dresses had cost. But clothes were only part of Ophelia's identity. The premium makeup brands he'd relied on were still beyond his reduced budget. Staring at his dwindling supplies of foundation, eyeshadow, and lipstick, Xander realized he needed an alternative approach. That's when he discovered the world of DIY cosmetics. Late into the night, he watched YouTube tutorials on making lip tints from beet juice, foundation from cocoa powder and arrowroot, eyeshadow from natural minerals. He ordered basic ingredients in bulk online, finding they cost pennies compared to the finished products he'd been buying. His first attempts were disasters. The foundation was too dark, the lip tint too bright. But with each failure came learning, and soon his bathroom counter was lined with small containers of homemade cosmetics that worked surprisingly well. 3 weeks after losing his job, Xander, or rather Ophelia, stood before the full-length mirror in his bedroom, admiring the transformation. The emerald green cocktail dress fit perfectly after some minor alterations he'd learned to do himself. The vintage kitten heels added just enough height. Her auburn hair, a wig he'd splurged on before the layoff, caught the light, bringing warmth to her complexion, enhanced by the homemade foundation and blush. "Well," she whispered to her reflection. "Crisis averted." That night, Ophelia ventured out for the first time since the layoff. A small club downtown hosted monthly gatherings for the cross-dressing community. She'd attended before, always in her expensive finery, but tonight felt different, more authentic somehow. "Ophelia, we missed you last month," called out Monica, the event organizer, as she entered. "Work got complicated," she replied, accepting a hug. "Then non-existent." Monica's expression softened. "I'm sorry to hear that, but I have to say you look fabulous. Is that dress new?" "New to me," Ophelia smiled. "Thrift store find." "No way. It looks designer." "It is. Just pre-owned." Throughout the evening, Several people commented on her appearance. When she revealed the budget-friendly sources of her outfit and makeup, conversations shifted from polite small talk to genuine interest. "You made that eyeshadow yourself?" asked a newcomer in a blue satin dress. "I've been buying the cheap drugstore stuff, but it irritates my skin."
"Homemade is actually better for sensitive skin," Ophelia explained, detailing the simple recipe she'd perfected. By the end of the night, she'd exchanged phone numbers with 5 people who wanted advice on thrifting and DIY beauty. Something had shifted. In her previous life as a marketing executive, Xander had always been focused on climbing higher, earning more, buying better. Now, Ophelia found joy in helping others, in finding value in the overlooked, in creating beauty from simple ingredients. The next week, she started a blog, Ophelia's Thrifty Transformations. Using her marketing skills, she crafted posts about finding quality secondhand clothes, altering them for a perfect fit, and creating cosmetics from pantry staples. She photographed before and after transformations, provided detailed tutorials, and shared tips for shopping on a budget. To her surprise, the blog gained traction quickly. Comments poured in from people grateful for the practical advice. Many were like her, facing financial constraints, but unwilling to give up the joy of self-expression through clothing and makeup. "Have you thought about hosting an actual workshop?" asked Monica during the next monthly gathering. "There's so much interest in what you're doing." "I wouldn't even know where to begin," Ophelia admitted. "Start small. Maybe a clothes swap? People bring items they don't want anymore and exchange them. You could demonstrate some of your alteration techniques." The idea took root. 2 weeks later, Ophelia hosted her first swap meet in the community room of her apartment building. 15 people attended, each bringing garments they no longer needed. She set up a small sewing station in the corner, showing how simple adjustments could transform an ill-fitting dress into a flattering silhouette. "This is brilliant!" exclaimed one participant, twirling in a newly hemmed skirt. "I was going to donate this because it was too long, but now it's perfect." The swap meet became a monthly event, growing each time. Ophelia expanded her demonstrations to include makeup tutorials and styling tips. Her blog audience grew accordingly. 6 months after losing his job, Xander had transitioned to working part-time as a marketing consultant while building Ophelia's brand. The severance money had long since run out, but between his consulting gigs and the modest income from blog sponsorships, he was staying afloat. More importantly, Ophelia never had to go on hiatus. The emerald green dress had been joined by dozens more secondhand treasures. Her auburn wig remained her signature look, though she'd learned to style it in various ways. Her makeup collection, now entirely homemade, filled a specially designed organizer. The transformation extended beyond appearance. Where Xander had once measured success in dollars and job titles, Ophelia found fulfillment in community and creativity. She kept her apartment, downsizing from designer furniture to charming thrift store finds. She maintained her professional contacts, but spent more time with the friends she'd made through her blog and swap meets. One evening, as she was preparing for a meeting with a potential blog sponsor, her phone rang. It was a number she didn't recognize. "Is this Ophelia? From the Thrifty Transformations blog?" "Yes, it is." "This is Regina Hayes from Style Conscious Magazine. We're doing a feature on sustainable fashion influencers, and your name keeps coming up. Would you be interested in an interview?" Ophelia sat down, stunned. Style Conscious was a major publication. "I'd be honored." "Wonderful. We'd like to do a photo shoot as well. Our readers would love to see some of your thrifted outfits and DIY cosmetics in action." After hanging up, Ophelia stared at her reflection in the vanity mirror. Her auburn hair framed a face that looked both familiar and transformed. This journey had begun in loss, in the necessity of adapting to reduced circumstances. But somewhere along the way,
It had become about more than just maintaining Ophelia on a budget. It had become about discovering what truly mattered. The photo shoot took place the following week at a renovated warehouse studio. The style-conscious team had created sets that complemented her thrifted wardrobe, vintage furniture, plants in repurposed containers, books stacked artfully on reclaimed wood shelves. "We want to capture the essence of your philosophy," explained the art director. "Beauty and style that's accessible to everyone, regardless of budget." Ophelia wore 5 different outfits that day, each one a testament to her thrifting expertise. The emerald green cocktail dress made an appearance, paired with a vintage scarf she'd repurposed as a belt. Her auburn hair remained constant throughout, styled differently for each look, but always framing her face in warm waves. Between shots, the interviewer asked questions about her journey. "What inspired you to start the blog?" Ophelia considered her answer carefully. "Necessity, initially. I lost a well-paying job and couldn't afford the expensive clothes and makeup I'd grown accustomed to, but I wasn't willing to give up that part of myself, so I had to get creative." "And now?" "Now it's about so much more. It's about rejecting the idea that beauty and self-expression are luxuries only available to those with disposable income. It's about community over consumption, and it's about finding value in what others overlook." The article was published a month later, featuring stunning photos and an in-depth profile. Ophelia's blog traffic tripled overnight. Brands began reaching out with partnership offers. A publisher contacted her about a potential book deal. At the next swap meet, now held in a rented community space to accommodate the growing attendance, people approached her with copies of the magazine, asking for autographs. "You've changed my life," one woman told her, eyes welling with tears. "I always thought I couldn't afford to dress the way I wanted. You showed me I could." Ophelia smiled, recognizing the emerald green blouse the woman wore. It had been part of her own collection until the previous swap meet. "That color looks beautiful on you." As the event wound down, Ophelia found a quiet moment with Monica, who had become a close friend and occasional co-host for the swap meets. "Did you ever imagine this is where you'd end up when you lost your job?" Monica asked, gesturing around at the bustling room. Ophelia shook her head, auburn hair catching the light. "Never. I thought losing that income meant losing Ophelia. Instead, I found her, the real her, for the first time." "And Xander?" Ophelia paused, considering. Xander still existed on paper. Consulting clients knew him by that name. His lease was in that name. His birth certificate and ID cards bore that identity. But in every meaningful way, Ophelia had become her authentic self. Her wardrobe no longer had a hidden section. Her makeup wasn't tucked away between uses. Her auburn hair didn't come off at the end of the night anymore. She'd been growing out her natural hair for months now, dyeing it to match her beloved auburn wig. "I think Xander found his true calling through Ophelia," she finally said. "And over time, the line between us has faded." Monica nodded, understanding the journey without needing every detail spelled out. "Well, I'm glad you're here, however you arrived." That evening, after everyone had left with their new-to-them treasures, Ophelia lingered in the rented space, gathering leftover items to donate. Her phone buzzed with an email notification. Opening it, she found a message from a former Pinnacle Advertising colleague. "Saw you in Style Conscious. Had no idea this was what you've been up to since the layoff. The company is actually hiring again. They're rebuilding the marketing department. Would you be interested in coming back?" "Same salary, better benefits." Ophelia stared at the message, memories of corner offices and corporate lunches flooding back. The security of a regular paycheck. The prestige of a director-level position. the resources to buy whatever clothes or makeup she wanted, without hunting through thrift stores or mixing ingredients in her kitchen. She glanced around at the scattered remnants of the swap meet, a forgotten scarf here, a makeup tutorial printout there. Her emerald green dress, now a signature piece in her wardrobe, had cost less than a business lunch at her old job. Her homemade foundation worked better than the designer brand she'd once splurged on. Typing quickly, she replied, "Thank you for thinking of me, but I've found my path. I'm not available to return, but I'd be happy to recommend some talented people for the position." Pressing send, she felt a weight lift that she hadn't realized she'd been carrying. The fear of financial insecurity had been her constant companion since the layoff, whispered in her ear during sleepless nights, shadowed her through discount stores and DIY projects. But somewhere along the way, that fear had transformed into something else. A creative force, a community builder, a source of authentic joy. 1 year to the day after losing his job at Pinnacle Advertising, Xander Matthews signed the paperwork to legally change his name. The clerk at the government office stamped the forms without comment. Just another routine task in a busy day. "Congratulations, Ms. Ophelia Matthews. Your new documentation should arrive within 3 to 4 weeks. Ophelia thanked her, gathering the receipts and information sheets. Outside, the sun shone brilliantly on a world that looked both familiar and entirely new. She adjusted the collar of her mint green blouse, a thrift store find that had cost $7, and ran a hand through her now naturally grown-out auburn hair, cut and styled to frame her face just so. Her phone buzzed with notifications, comments on her latest blog post, RSVP confirmations for the upcoming seasonal swap meet, a message from her publisher about cover design options for her book, Transform Style, Sustainability, and Self-Discovery on a Budget. As she walked home, she passed a high-end boutique displaying a dress remarkably similar to her thrifted emerald green cocktail dress, with a price tag 10 times what she'd paid. She smiled, no longer feeling the pang of wanting what seemed out of reach. What she had built for herself, a community, a purpose, an authentic identity, was worth far more than designer labels had ever been. That evening, she hosted a small gathering at her apartment. Monica was there, along with friends from the crossdressing community, blog followers turned confidants, and even the elderly woman from Twice as Nice, the first thrift store she'd ventured into after the layoff. "A toast," Monica said, raising her glass, "to Ophelia, who turned necessity into art, loss into opportunity, and strangers into family." "And," added the shop owner with a knowing smile, "who proved that the most valuable transformations have nothing to do with price tags." Ophelia looked around at the faces of people who had become central to her life, all brought together by a journey that began with loss. Her emerald green dress caught the light as she raised her own glass. "To transformation," she said simply, "and to finding yourself in unexpected places." Later, when the guests had gone and the apartment was quiet, Ophelia stood before her mirror one last time before bed. Her reflection showed auburn hair falling softly around her shoulders, features enhanced by her own handmade cosmetics, the emerald dress now comfortable as a second skin. The cardboard box that had once held the remnants of Xander's career had long since been repurposed. It now stored seasonal accessories in the top of her closet. The marketing awards and certificates had been donated during a decluttering phase. What remained was a sense of purpose stronger than any she'd felt in the corporate world, and a self-awareness that no paycheck could have purchased. "Well?" she whispered to her reflection,
echoing the words she'd spoken in this same spot a year earlier, but with an entirely different meaning. Crisis averted. Only this time, it wasn't just about maintaining appearances on a budget. It was about discovering that what had initially seemed like an economic disaster had actually been the catalyst for the most meaningful transformation of her life, one that went far deeper than clothes or makeup, one that had finally aligned her outer expression with her innermost truth. Ophelia turned off the light and slipped into bed, already planning tomorrow's blog post, already imagining the next swap meet, already living fully as the person she was always meant to become.
Thanks for watching, my girlies! Be sure to check out Patreon for more!